I'm well, thank you. So it's exciting that we're here together today to say a little bit about this project that we're doing together. And I don't want to keep it as a mystery, so the project is sharing Black women's voices, leadership voices. I was really happy that a few years ago we were able to take the book that the Congress had developed, Black Women Who Made a Difference, and share that with our community. And really, here at Delmore Buddy Day, the work that we do around community connections, valuing people's voices, centering our community, I was thinking about it and I thought, let's take that book up again and do something with the Congress of Black Women, with your local chapter. And so when I reached out to you, I was so glad you said, yes, let's do something together.
Yes, and I want to thank you for that. It was exciting because you know what? The Congress was saying, in fact, it's funny, when you called me, I was just talking to a couple national groups, and they said, what are you guys doing now? I said, we just got a call from Delmore Buddy Day Institution. They want us to go back and look at our book, Black Women Made a Difference, and go through there and just setting it up. And that was so powerful. So for me, it was like, yes, let's do this together. Because and the fact is, and you calling, you and I worked together in the past and doing a lot of projects. When you worked with us with the Congress, when you were in the Department of Education, we did a lot of work together, Congress of Black Women with you in the Department of Education and so forth. So for me, it was a great way to get it. I said, Buddy Day, it's another educational piece. It's different, but it's the same format, educating our community about women, especially Black women, because we don't hear a lot about Black women in Nova Scotia, but our Black women that are not necessarily in profession, but we don't hear about what we did. We looked at all women of all categories, which I thought was really nice. So I thought it was really great when you said, let's do this again. So for me, it was great.
That's when I started really getting interested in women's rights and that. And when I even went to the hospital, I could see how some people were treated. And this was white people, some of them. They were getting treated because of lack of education. They weren't being treated fairly. See, I always had a thing about fair. Everybody deserves to be treated fairly. Never thought that it was anything to do with human rights, just as being a person, treating another person properly. I went to a union meeting, and the table was white, and it was male. Except down the line, one sister was sitting there, Cecile. She was white. She's from Cape Breton, and we were good friends. But everything was the guys. And I thought, I can do what he can do. So the first contest that came up about it, one of the guys went to a conference, didn't bring back anything, and the Seton and I stood up and objected about it, and I said, I can do his job. I says, he's getting paid for doing something I said that he's not even doing. So the election came up, and I ran for it, and I got it. Didn't know what I was going to do with it after I got it, but I got it. And then I got into the politics side of it, and then just started moving up, and I learned how to read and open up my mouth. As a Black woman, and as for speaking for most Black women, we got a double. And God help us if we also had a disability. So there you would have it that you're a woman, you have a disability, and you're a person of color. Nobody wants to see you if you're a woman, but they'll take a woman over disability and color. That's not right. There's nothing wrong with your brain. If something's wrong with your arm or your leg or some other part, you might be physically challenged. But there's nothing else wrong with you, so you shouldn't be treated like you're non-existent. That's not fair. And if you can't get to the top by yourself or something is stopping you, reach behind you and pull up the sister or the brother that's behind you. Give them a hand up. Don't get at the top and say, I made it, I don't know about you. Yeah, you have to know about the person coming behind you. Reach back. Always take time to reach back. Don't leave any door closed. If you want to go through that door, open it and go in. And don't go in the back door, go in the front. If there's two doors, take the front door.
My early education takes me back to the segregated school in East Preston. Originally it was just two. It was a two-room, but by the time I went to it, it was more than a two-room. But it wasn't really a big school. But I remember it so well because that was my foundation for my education. I had such wonderful teachers. They were so supportive, and they made sure that they were very loving, and they were very caring, and they made sure that their main purpose was to equip us with the necessary educational tools to go further in life. Precious memories of my father, James Thomas, and my mother, Marguerite Thomas. My father maintained 3 jobs before he passed away at a very young age in a tragic accident. And I clearly remember the stories that he told me during his weekly visits about his full-time job as a laborer on the historic Citadel Hill. And he worked to help restore the Citadel Hill to its Victorian era appearance. My grandfather, Deacon James Slaughter, and my grandmother, Mrs. Ina Slaughter, they brought me up. So they raised me. My grandfather was very political. So he would take me to political meetings. At that point, I did not know municipal from provincial from federal politics. To me, it was all one. But through his education, because he felt that it was very important for me to learn how the political system works. And so through him, by going to meetings, I learned the difference between the 3 levels of government. The telephone company, like I told you at the beginning, how I started my job there. I was asked. I used to go to union meetings. Used to keep abreast of to what was happening, and then all of a sudden, I didn't go to a union meeting for a few years. But I received this phone call from an ally, and said, "You know what? You would make a great president. Why don't you run? There's going to be an election." And I said, "I can't do that. I can't do that. I haven't gone to a union meeting in ages." They said, "Yes, you can." So anyway, they convinced me, and I ran for the position. And to my surprise, I won at that time 69% of the votes. I was able to gain confidence with the membership. And I think the way I did that was to make sure that we held union meetings in all of the communities in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. So people knew that I was a very open-minded person and also willing to listen and take their problems serious and make sure that they were dealt with.
Education was very important to her. She felt that education was the entry point into changing your life trajectory. So that was her story. That was all of her work is around, community and housing and discrimination and racism that she experienced, and fighting for systemic change to happen, not only within institutions, but within other public, spheres, so that those after her or those right beside her could have access, which for years, and because she was coming from a generation of where they didn't have access, this was her motivation. This would be what would drive her and opening up those doors. We always talk about reaching back, or the Sankofa word, and which is always about reaching back, right? And bringing us forward. And so it was very important to Mom that she did that we do that, that as a community, we support one another, and we help, we carry one another, and we support one another, and we lift one another up. She'd say, never let anybody define who you are and what your journey will be. That was one of her stories where, she was on her way home to Sydney and stopped in a restaurant in Antigonish, her and one of her nursing student colleagues. And they told her as they went in that she couldn't order, she couldn't eat. But Mom was embarrassed and insulted and horrified. And, but these are real stories when people think that, the Black community is always going on and on and on. These are real life experiences that people have gone through. I think that Mom would say that parenting and good parenting, part of that is role modeling, and part of that is being open, and that unconditional love means actually unconditional love.
My spiritual journey started when I was, just a child in the community, and we had to go through, I got baptized when I was about 12, and I started teaching Sunday school, I think, when I was about 15, 16. Then I became involved as a Sunday school superintendent and church counselor and church clerk and all that sort of stuff. And I never thought of being a teacher. I thought I was going to be like my mother. I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home wife. Being the youngest child, I had a lot of nieces and nephews, and I used to play school with them. I had a lot of them that were only about 5 or 6 years younger than me, so I started teaching, I guess, when I was only 9, 10 years old. And so this became natural. I got my Bachelor of Arts in English, double major, English and history. And then I knew I wanted to go into education. So after that, I went to, at that time, it was a place called Landing Institute of Education on Halifax, South Street. And with special education, I wanted to work with kids with learning disabilities. So I did that, and then I got my BEd in counseling, would have been when I became a guidance counselor. I think the main thing, because I saw other teachers and guidance counselors or people that, for the Black students, I found that they trying to divert them to community college. And even if somebody had the grades and if they wanted to apply to university, they said, well, what about community college? Because I was just told that just lately. One of my nieces told me that. And she applied to go to a university to guidance counselor. Oh, no. The university's hard. You should just go to, you should go to community college. And I was told the same thing when I applied. And one thing that saved me from not applying to the college was because of my English teacher. Well, the main thing is just to be yourself, and if you have the opportunity to travel, to see other nationalities, or even within your country, because a lot of us, even in our own province, we don't get out and travel. We stay in our own community just to get out and see how the people live. Don't get stuck in your own little world. That's kind of, I think that's kind of sad. Like, I think you should, mix and mingle with people, and as I said, basically be kind. Try to be kind to people and share what you have with them.
My upbringing
was rooted in the church, as both of my parents were very active in the church in many organizations, but also in the church choir, both my mother and my father. We had a community life which more or less centered around the church. Black Baptist Church, the Cherry Brook United Baptist Church. Church was always an anchor for me growing up as a young person. I have to say I owe a great debt to my parents, both my mother and my father, but particularly my mother, because she was a strong black woman, matriarch of our family. She put a great deal of emphasis on our education because she herself had been segregated school teacher and went as far as she could for her generation. After I graduated from Mount St. Vincent, I did work at the Human Rights Commission, and that helped me to apply to law school. My law school experience was mixed. In the 70s, when I attended, it really attracted many of the students from the upper echelons of Canadian society. Some professors would go the extra mile to encourage me, and I had some excellent professors. Some of the students, they would let you know that they didn't think you should be there, and there are many times I questioned whether or not I should continue on. I'm glad I did overall, but I'm not going to say it was an easy journey for me. It wasn't easy. It was challenging year after year after year. And of course, when you're the first one in your family to go to university, who do you rely on to give you guidance? Who do you rely on to give you mentorship? At the time when I was appointed, of course, I was very aware of my place in history in Nova Scotia, but not so in Canada. Of course, that I became aware of that later. One of the most inspirational speeches came from Mrs. Pearline Oliver, the bigger picture for our community. She said that my appointment was a debt owed to black people in the province of Nova Scotia. It was very powerful. Yeah. I always remembered those words. It's not because I think that anyone owed me anything. I worked very hard and I faced a lot of discrimination on my way to the bench, and including on the bench. So, you know, I experienced that as a young girl growing up. It didn't stop throughout my life. And even now, going into certain public places, you can sense a hostility when people throw things at you, or they ignore you in a store, or they assume all the negative things about you because of the color of your skin. So I know about that. It's not because I think anybody owes me anything. I've worked very hard and against a number of odds